Okay.
Okay.
Oh, you know you will. Alright, today I'm going to tell you the story of Persephone, who is the goddess of nature. She is the daughter of Zeus, who's the king of the gods, and Demeter, who's the goddess of agriculture. Having two such important parents, she was pretty special herself. She was kind of a combination of their traits. Being the daughter of the goddess of agriculture, she almost looked like a flower herself, being in that nature category. She had skin that was soft like petals, her body was slender and flexible like a stem, and her eyes, which were her most striking feature, looked like pansies. They were this deep purplish violet color, ringed with a gold edging. Now, being the daughter of Zeus and Demeter, you would think that she would be a little bit snobby and snooty, but as a result, she was very realistic, she was very down to earth, she was very rooted, and that might be the nature qualities that her mother gave her. She realized, too, that because Zeus was not always around a lot, she was probably going to be responsible for taking care of herself at some point in the future. And so as a result, she focused really hard on her studies and her schoolwork in order to make something of herself and be able to take care of herself one day. She thought that she would probably be good as a florist or as the owner of a nursery, once again using those nature qualities that she had. And so as a result, she spent a lot of time at school in their greenhouse working to enhance her skills in that area. Well, one day she stayed late after school to work in the greenhouse, and when she realized she needed to get on home to meet her mother, she was like, oh, I left my history book in my locker. So she heads to her locker to get her book before she leaves for the day, and when she gets to her locker, she finds there's this stem sticking out of the locker. Now, she looks at the stem because being this goddess of flowers, she's thinking, I know every flower that's out there, and she can't quite picture what flower this is. So she opens her locker so that she doesn't mess up the blossoms of the flower by yanking it out. And it is this deep purple color. It's ringed in gold, and she thinks, this looks somehow familiar, but she can't quite place how she should know this flower. So she takes out her cell phone, and she's going to take a picture of it so that she can Google it when she gets home. And as she's snapping the picture of the flower, the fragrance of the flower is so intoxicating that it just captures her, and her thoughts are gone for anything else. When she kind of comes back to her senses and looks around, she's like, wait, I'm not where I just was. And she's glancing around herself, and she is seeing plants, she's seeing trees, she's seeing shrubs, and she's like, this is not the hallways of Olympus High. So looking at the flowers and the plants too, she's like, they're shades of black, they're gray, they're purple. This is like no garden I've ever seen before. As she is turning, trying to figure out where she is, she bumps into Hades. And he's holding a flower that is identical to the one she had sticking out of her locker. He hands it to her and says, I grew this for you. And she realizes that, oh, these two flowers, what was so unusual about them, the purple, the gold, they look just like her eyes. And she's flattered that someone was inspired enough by her to grow something that she had inspired. So although she's aggravated that he has just kind of snatched her out of her school and just taken her against her will, she's also a little bit flowered that this guy is interested enough in her to try to grow something and find something artistic that is related to her. Meanwhile, her mother is waiting at home for her because she was supposed to be coming home that evening to watch the results show for Dancing with the Gods with her. It is Tuesday night, and they just know that this is the week that Hephaestus is getting voted off, because how many weeks can a lame god get the sympathy vote before it's time for him to move on and let somebody else win? So Demeter is waiting around for Persephone to get home. She has the Medusa mint ice cream ready in the freezer. She's got the remote poised to go as soon as her daughter gets home, and she is waiting, and there's no Persephone. Time passes, still no Persephone. When she realizes it's just been too long to have waited for her daughter, she heads out to find her and traces her back to school. Still no Persephone. At her locker, the girl's cell phone is on the floor where she dropped it when the fragrance of the flower enveloped her. She picks it up. She flips it open because that's what your parents do when they find your cell phones. They flip it open. And she sees the picture that Persephone took of the flower, and immediately she knows where her daughter is. Because whereas Persephone couldn't quite place that flower. As goddess of agriculture, Demeter could pinpoint what flower went for where it grew, where it was going to be found at any point of any time, and so immediately she knows that her daughter is in the underworld. And she also knows that as the goddess of nature, she's got no power there, she's going to need help to get her back. So she goes to see Zeus. Zeus just kind of blows her off and says, "It's okay, she's fine, don't worry about it." And Demeter's like, "No, this is our child, we need her home." And Zeus is like, "No, she's good, it's fine." And Demeter realizes that Zeus and Hades are in this together, and she's not getting her daughter back anytime soon. So Demeter is in a huff. She leaves, she goes home, and she says, "If no one's helping me, I'm not helping anybody else either." And she basically goes on strike. She puts on her pajamas, she turns on her soaps, she gets out her ice cream, and she veges. Right. So, meanwhile, her not working is affecting the people of the earth, because when she's not working, nothing is growing for them. And when Zeus is trying to fall asleep one night, he starts hearing these cries and something that's keeping him from going to sleep. He looks down from Olympus, and he sees that there's nothing growing, the grass is brown, the leaves have fallen off the trees, the cattle is thin, everything is kind of dying, there's this famine in the land. And he realizes if he doesn't do something for man, he's never going to get any rest. And one thing you don't want to mess with Zeus is his beauty sleep. So he goes to Demeter, and he says, "Why aren't you doing your job?" And she says, "Until my daughter comes back to me, I'm not working. I'm on strike. This is it." So Zeus realizes that he must do something to solve this problem, to get man back on track. He summons Hermes, the messenger god. He sends Hermes to the underworld and says, "Go get my daughter, bring her back here." Hermes is on his way. Meanwhile, in the underworld, Persephone is being led around by Hades. She's trying not to act flattered by the attention, but she's a little impressed that he's in charge of all this stuff, even though it's the underworld. It's still a pretty vast area. He shows her the Isles of the Blessed, the fields of Asphodel. He points out the places where everybody's getting a special punishment for something they did while they were up on Earth. And she's impressed by that power that he has to control all of this and assign these punishments and monitor what's going on. But in order not to seem too impressed by him, anytime he offers her anything or says anything to her, she blows him off. She says, "That's nice. That's okay." She looks at her watch and says, "Can I go home yet?" And he's realizing he's getting nowhere with her. He's frustrated. He's tired a little bit too, but he still likes her. Anyway, he pulls a bag of M&Ms out of his pocket. He starts nibbling them, and they are dark chocolate M&Ms, which are Persephone's favorite, because since her mom is the goddess of agriculture, there's a lot of nature and natural food and healthy food in their house, so chocolate's her weakness. Hades, just kind of as a side, says, "You want some?" And she takes them, and she starts popping a couple in her mouth, and they're wonderful, but she's still trying not to be impressed by anything he's given her. At this point, Hermes arrives and says, "I've come to take you home." And she's like, "Yes!" And she grabs him by the hand, and they are immediately transported back home. There Zeus is waiting, Demeter is waiting, Demeter is ecstatic to see her daughter. They hug, they embrace, they're excited. Demeter is ready to catch up on everything they've missed. When a voice from behind them, they hear, "You know she can't stay." And they look, and there's Hades, and Demeter says, "What do you mean?" And he holds up the bag of M&Ms. Demeter looks at her daughter and says, "What have you done?" And Demeter pulls that phrase that everybody does, "What? I didn't do anything." And Zeus, realizing what has happened, goes, "Oh, crap. How do I get that? How do I fix this?" Hades explains to Persephone that one of the laws of the underworld is that if you eat in the underworld, you can't leave. You stay there. And so she's going to go back. She's going to have to go back with him. Demeter looks at Zeus and says, "I am not going to live without my daughter anymore." Hades says, "Well, I'm not going to live without her either, and I don't have to. The law's on my side." And Zeus realizes that he must come up with some sort of compromise or decree to fix this situation. So he says, "Well, how many M&Ms did she actually eat?" And Hades says 6. He says, "Okay, well, she will have to stay in the underworld 1 month for each of the M&Ms that she ate, and then the remainder of the time she can be with her mother." Demeter's not happy, but she accepts it. Hades is content because he's at least got Persephone for half the year. And Persephone's still kind of flattered that he's gone through all this trouble to get her. And so she returns to the underworld with Hades. And that was the explanation for why we have part of the year when nothing is growing, everything is brown, everything is drab, and the crops are dead, because that's the time of the year when Persephone is with her mother. And then the part of the year when it's spring and it's summer and everything is green and growing and blossoming, that is when Persephone has returned to her mother. And so to show that happiness, the earth is happy as well. So please tell me what you liked or did not like about the storytelling experience. Ashley, you can talk.